Welcome back to Deer Valley Homestead with myself, Andy, Beata, who's on screen, and
Lymeria. What are you doing?
being 3.5 months old, Lymeria wants to eat absolutely everything. And while we let her have a lot of freedom, grapes are one thing she is not allowed to eat, no matter how much she tries.
Do you need help? Getting birth. It's not coming.
No,
Can you shake that off now?
Okay. Last week you saw us renovating the vineyard and renovating all of the equipment that we're using this week, including the fruit press and this grape crusher. Now, neither myself or Beata have ever made wine before, so this really was our first time, and it's very much a case of trial and error for us. We're aiming to make around 100 litres of wine, which we consider to be a small amount, and the reason for that is that we just want to go through the process, learn what we can, and be ready for next year, when hopefully we have a lot more grapes and a lot more time. The white grapes you see here are from the vineyard. The red grapes are from our current house, also known as Deer Valley Homestead. We've done both as separate batches, just to see what they taste like. We never actually weighed the grapes, but it was 2 large 120 litre barrels, so that should give us about 240 litres of grapes, which when crushed down gave us just over 100 litres of grape juice. With the white grapes we ended up with about 25 litres, and you'll see little bits of the white grapes throughout this video, but mostly we've focused on the red. I was trying to keep track of how many times we loaded up this grape crusher, but honestly I completely lost count. We were just having so much fun messing around, learning something new, and just generally having a good time. I spent a lot of time reading about how to make wine, and honestly it just seems very confusing, complicated, and no one can give you a straight answer on anything. For us, in the end, I have to say it was a very easy process. Pick the grapes, crush the grapes, let them ferment a little bit, squeeze out all the skins, and move them into another barrel for second fermentation. We didn't add any yeast, we didn't add any chemicals, we didn't do any kind of cleaning of the grapes. It's really just about as natural as it can be. And honestly, what we've found is that this has worked really, really well, and you will see the fermentation later on in this video. After crushing, we had to just flatten them out so they were all in the juice. And we left them alone for 5 days, just going in once a day, just to smush them around, make sure the top got to the bottom got to the top, and all of that kind of stuff. Right on the 100 litre mark. We tested the grape juice that we'd made for the sugar content and ended up at about 22.5%. For our region, it's pretty rare to get a sugar content this high. Normally, they struggle to get it up to around 15%. But this summer has just been so hot. These grapes have had nearly 90 days of straight sunshine, and they just came out wonderfully. We added 20 litres of water, and this wasn't really about adjusting the sugar content or anything like that. It was just that we wanted a little bit more juice, so that we could make that little bit more wine. After 5 days in this big tub, we moved it into a plastic barrel and squeezed out all of the stems and skins so that we could get as much as possible. There seems to be quite a controversy in winemaking over leaving the stems in or taking them out. It also seems to me that there seems to be half the people on one side of the argument and half the people on the other, which tells me that either way is going to work. For us, we left them in. In the end, the drill pump didn't work at all, so we ended up doing it by hand. Last week you saw a few snippets of restoring this fruit press and the grape crusher. If you want to see a full video on it, let me know. I did film it, but I never made the video. If there's some interest, I'm happy to put it together. This is my first ever time using a fruit press, and I have to say, it's a lot of fun. It's kind of therapeutic.
That looks horrible. Doesn't look that tasty yet, huh?
Does.
Probably. Could have at some point checked this work, but we did not. Think we could.
Wow. In the end, from the fruit press we took about another 35 litres. I was actually really impressed with how well this worked, and you'll see a picture of what was left at the end a little bit
How
later.
hard did you squeeze? No more. It's like a workout.
There was just a little bit left in the tub at the end, and we weren't going to let that go to waste, so we put that through the sieve and into the barrel as well. You can see here that the wine's already started fermenting, and we added 4 kilos of sugar. I can't tell you the formula because I don't fully understand it, but that's what we did. It was at this point that we were going to add some yeast and another set of chemicals which were supposed to help the yeast. However, the fermentation started, and it started strong, and we thought, you know what, let's just see what happens. So we rolled with it. We know that only having natural yeast in there is likely to lead to a lower alcohol content. However, we're both quite happy with that. And this is all that was left from the 2 120 litre barrels filled with grapes. I'm sure it's going to go great in the compost, although I do wonder if I'm going to end up sprouting a bunch of vines. After we finished all of that process, we moved it across these glass containers. Each one is 50 litres, and I think we ended up with around 90 litres of wine. I started siphoning it off, and in the end I gave up and moved it by jug and then siphoned it down. The fermentation had already started pretty hard at this point, and there were just that many little bubbles of CO2 that I couldn't keep the siphon going for very long. It was incredibly satisfying watching this wine siphon down into these 2 glass jars. I have to say, and I'm probably slightly biased, that I'm convinced that this is going to be the best wine in the world. And anyone who asks, I will probably end up telling them that, although of course in reality, it probably won't be. When I finished siphoning the wine down, I put the 2 caps onto these large bottles. Each one has a small hole, and I put it in this clear plastic tube, which then goes up into this glass bottle and basically acts as an airlock, and this is supposed to stop anything nasty getting down into the wine. This of course is the second fermentation, and if you're wondering what they call it, it's the second fermentation stage. No unoriginal names there. Next week I'm taking the 240 litres of wine that's down in the cellar that was left from the previous owner of the house, and we're having that distilled into brandy. I used a little bit of plasticine just to make sure that we got a good seal on top of the bottles. The fermentation was pretty slow at first, although I think this is more because of the way that I siphoned it than anything else. But fairly quickly it picked up, and it has been bubbling away for 5 days ever since. On the left you have the 2 50-litre glass barrels, and on the right you have the white, which is in some 5-litre containers. As always, thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see how this wine tastes in a couple of months' time.